Under the Transfer of Property Act 1882, the doctrine of lis pendens is codified in which section? Section 52 of the Transfer of Property Act 1882 expressly bars any transfer of immovable property during the pendency of a suit. Which doctrine bars an authority from acting beyond the powers conferred by statute? Doctrine of ultra vires. The phrase ultra vires literally means beyond the powers. So any act of an authority exceeding the powers granted to it by the parent statute is struck down on this very ground. Under the Patents Act 1970, the term of every patent granted is "20 years from date of filing." D is the right choice. Under the Special Marriage Act 1954, the minimum notice period for an intended marriage is. Section 5, read with Section 6, requires the marriage officer to publish the notice and wait 30 days for objections before solemnizing the marriage. So D is the right choice. Under the Indian Evidence Act 1872, confessions to police officers were governed by which section? Section 25 of the Indian Evidence Act categorically declared that no confessions made to a police officer shall be proved against a person accused of any offense. D is the right choice. Under the Code on Wages 2019, which authority is empowered to fix the minimum wages at the central level? Section 5 of the Code on Wages 2019 vests the power to fix and revise minimum wages in respect of scheduled employments in the central sphere with the central government. So A, central government. Under the BNSS 2023, the registration of an FIR for a cognizable offence is governed by Section 173. This corresponds to the erstwhile Section 154 of the CRPC and lays down the procedure for recording information in cognizable cases, FIR. Under the Negotiable Instruments Act 1881, presumption in favor of holder of a check is contained in Section 139. It creates a statutory presumption that the holder received the check for the discharge of a debt or liability, shifting the burden to the accused to rebut it. A is the right choice. Under the Industrial Disputes Act 1947, retrenchment is defined in which section? Section 200. The definition clause of the Act, Section 200, defines retrenchment as termination of a workman's service for any reason other than disciplinary action, voluntary retirement, superannuation, ill health, or expiry of contract. 10. Judicial review of administrative action in India is primarily exercised under which provisions? Articles 32 and 226 of the Constitution. Choice C is the right one. Articles 32 and 226 of the Constitution. Under the BSA 2023, electronic and digital records are admissible under which section? Section 63 of Bharatiya Sakshya Adhiniyam 2023 reenacts the regime of the old Section 65B of the Indian Evidence Act and governs the admissibility of electronic and digital records. So the right choice is C, Section 63. Which article of the Constitution of India guarantees the right to equality before the law? Article 14 expressly states that the state shall not deny to any person equality before the law or the equal protection of the laws within the territory of India. So D is the right choice. Under Article 226, writs may be issued by which court? Article 226 is a special power conferred only on every High Court to issue writs. The Supreme Court derives its corresponding writ power from Article 32 and not from Article 226. So B, High Courts only. Bills may be filed before the Supreme Court and High Courts under which article respectively? Public interest litigations invoke writ jurisdiction. Article 32 before the Supreme Court and Article 226 before the High Courts. Since bill is a procedural innovation on these writ remedies, choice C is correct. Section 302 of IPC 1860 corresponds to which provisions of the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita 2023? In the renumbered BNS 2023, the offence of murder, formerly IPC Section 302, is punished under Section 103. Under the BNSS 2023, the maximum period for completion of investigation in a case triable by magistrate is. The BNSS extends the outer limit of investigation in magistrate triable cases to 180 days, replacing the earlier shorter limit and enabling more thorough investigation. Choice B is the right choice. Lok Adalats are constituted under which Act? Chapter 6 of the Legal Services Authorities Act 1987, Sections 19 to 22, statutorily organizes Lok Adalats and gives their awards the status of civil court decrees. Choice A is the right choice. Under the BCI rules, an advocate is prohibited from doing which of the following? Advertising or soliciting work. Advertising or soliciting work. Choice C. C is the right choice. Under the Muslim Personal Law, Sharia Application Act 1937, the Act applies to which matters? Personal law matters of Muslims such as marriage, divorce and succession. Choice A is the right choice. Under the BNSS 2023, summary trial procedure is contained in which chapter? Chapter 22 2 of the BNSS 2023 lays down the procedure for summary trials, replacing the corresponding chapter of CRPC dealing with petty and short-term punishment offences. Under the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita 2023, the punishment for terrorist act is provided under which section? Section 113. Under the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita 2023, the offence of murder is punishable under which section? Section 101 defines murder and Section 103 prescribes its punishment, death or life imprisonment with fine, in the renumbered scheme of the BNS 2023. C is the right choice. Which schedule of the Constitution contains provisions relating to anti-defection of legislators? Tenth schedule. Inserted by the 52nd Constitutional Amendment, lays down grounds for procedure for disqualification of legislators on the grounds of defection. Foreign judgments are dealt with under which section of the CPC 1908? Section 13 of the CPC declares a foreign judgment conclusive between the parties except on the 6 specified grounds: lack of jurisdiction, merits not gone into, fraud, etc. So section 13, choice B is the right choice. Under the BSA 2023, dying declarations are admissible under which section? The BSA 2023 places dying declaration within section 26 and clause A of that section preserves the old section 32(1) rule that statements by a person as to the cause of death are relevant. Under Order 7, Rule 11 of the CPC 1908, a plaint may be rejected on which ground? The plaint does not disclose a cause of action. Choice A. Under the Negotiable Instruments Act 1881, dishonor of a check for insufficiency of funds is an offence under which section? Section 138 was inserted in 1988 to criminalize dishonor of a check for insufficiency of funds in the drawer's account, prescribing imprisonment up to 2 years and or fine. Under the Indian Penal Code 1860, the offence of criminal conspiracy was defined in which section? Section 120A of the IPC defines criminal conspiracy as an agreement between 2 or more persons to do an illegal act or a legal act by illegal means, with Section 120B prescribing its punishment. Rajesh, in anger, fractures Sunil's arm with an iron rod, disabling it for weeks. Under BNS, the offence is voluntarily causing grievous hurt under Section 117. Public interest litigation in India primarily evolved as a relaxation of which traditional rule? Rule of locus standi. Choice here is the right choice. Under the Hindu Marriage Act 1955, conditions of a valid Hindu marriage are contained in which section? Section 5 enumerates the 5 conditions: monogamy, sound mind, marriageable age, prohibited relationships, and subpoena relationship, without which a Hindu marriage cannot be validly solemnized. Under the Indian Contract Act 1872, consideration is defined in which section? Section 2D defines consideration as something done, abstained from, or promised at the desire of promise by the promise or any other person. Under the Indian Contract Act 1872, a contract entered into by reasons of coercion is voidable at the option of the aggrieved party. The new offence of snatching has been introduced under which section of the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita 2023? Section 304 of the BNS creates the standalone offence of snatching, sudden seizure of movable property, which had no separate provision in the old IPC. So B is the right choice. Section 304. The Goods and Services Tax in India was introduced by which constitutional amendment? The 101st Amendment. The Constitution's 101st Amendment Act 2016. Choice A is the right choice. Under the Industrial Disputes Act 1947, conditions precedent to retrenchment of workmen are contained in which section? Section 25F mandates 1 month's notice or paid leave and payment of retrenchment compensation as preconditions to a lawful retrenchment of any workman in continuous service. Maintenance to a divorced Muslim wife is provided under which act as interpreted in Daniel Latifi? Muslim Women Protection of Rights on Divorce Act 1986. Which section of the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita 2023 defines and punishes the offence of cheating? Section 318 of the BNS defines cheating and prescribes its punishment, replacing the cluster of sections 415 to 420 of the old IPC. So choice A, section 318 is the right choice. Under the Arbitration and Conciliation Act 1996, which section deals with the appointment of arbitrators? Section 11 lays down the procedure for appointment of arbitrators and empowers the Supreme Court or the High Court as designated arbitral institution to make the appointment when parties fail to agree. Under the Hindu Succession Amendment Act 2005, daughters were granted what status in compulsory property? Answer is D. Equal compulsory rights as sons by birth. An arbitral award may be set aside by a court under which section of the Arbitration and Conciliation Act 1996? Section 34 enumerates the limited grounds: fraud, public policy, incapacity, beyond the scope of submission, etc., on which a court may set aside a domestic arbitral award. Under the Payment of Gratuity Act 1972, gratuity is payable on completion of how many years of continuous service? 5 years. Choice C is the right choice. Which statement on Sapinda relationship under the Hindu Marriage Act 1955 is correct? C. It extends to 3 generations through the mother and 5 through the father. C is the right choice. Under the Companies Act 2013, the minimum number of directors required in a private company is 2. Section 149(1) prescribes the minimum number of directors as 2 for a private company, 3 for a public company, and 1 for a one-person company. Under the Guardians and Wards Act 1890, the paramount consideration in appointing a guardian is welfare of the minor. Choice C is the right choice. In which case did the Supreme Court formally develop the concept of epistolary jurisdiction in Pill? S.P. Gupta versus Union of India. Supreme Court accepted that even a letter addressed to the court could be treated as a writ petition. The doctrine of estoppel is codified under which section of the Bharatiya Sakshya Adhiniyam 2023? Section 121 of the BSA 2023 carries forward the rule of the old Section 115 of the Indian Evidence Act, preventing a person from denying a representation on which another has acted to his detriment. The doctrine of entry fois acquit. The doctrine of autrefois acquit and autrefois convict is codified in the BNSS 2023 under which section? Section 337. B is the right choice. Under which section of the Code of Civil Procedure 1908 is the doctrine of res judicata codified? Section 11 codifies res judicata. barring a court from trying any suit or issue already finally decided between the same parties by a competent court. B is the right choice. Under Article 32, the Supreme Court can issue writs for enforcement of which category of rights? Fundamental rights. Article 32 is itself a fundamental right that guarantees the right to move the Supreme Court for enforcement of the rights conferred by Part 3 of the Constitution. Fundamental rights. B is the choice. Under the CPC 1908, summary procedure for suits on negotiable instruments is contained in which order? Order 37. A is the right choice. Under the Consumer Protection Act 2019, the pecuniary jurisdiction of the District Commission is up to ₹1 crore. Section 34 of the 2019 Act, as amended in 2021, fixes the District Commission's pecuniary jurisdiction at complaints where the value of the goods or services does not exceed ₹1 crore. Under the Consumer Protection Act 2019, an appeal from a district commission lies to State Commission. Answer C. Answer C is the right choice. Temporary injunctions and interlocutory orders are governed by which order of the CPC 1908? Order 39th. B is the right choice. Under the CRPC 1973, a complaint to a magistrate was governed by which section? Section 200 of the CRPC required a magistrate, on taking cognizance of an offence on complaint, to examine the complainant and the witnesses on oath. The expression procedure established by law in Article 21 was reinterpreted to require fairness in which case? In Maneka Gandhi 1978, the Supreme Court overruled Gopalan and held that the procedure established by law under Article 21 must be just, fair, and reasonable, importing due process by judicial interpretation. 57. Compulsory acquisition of land in India is currently governed primarily by which Act? D. Right to fair compensation and transparency in Land Acquisition Act. Inland Acquisition Act 2013. The principle of absolute liability was evolved by the Supreme Court of India in which case? MC Mehta versus Union of India, popularly known as Oleum Gas Leak. The jurisdiction of civil courts to try all suits of civil nature is contained in which section of the CPC? Section 9 declares that civil courts shall have jurisdiction to try all suits of a civil nature except those whose cognizance is expressly or impliedly barred. So Section 9, choice D is the right choice. Under the BNSS 2023, electronic mode of recording statements of witnesses is permitted under which section? Section 530 of the BNSS expressly permits trials, inquiries, and proceedings, including the recordings of witnesses' statements, to be conducted in electronic mode using audio-visual means. Under the Code of Criminal Procedure 1973, the inherent powers of High Court were preserved under which section? Section 482. C is the right choice. Punishment for professional or other misconduct of an advocate is provided under which section of the Advocates Act 1961? Section 35 empowers State Bar Council's disciplinary committee to reprimand, suspend, or remove from the role any advocate found guilty of professional or other misconduct. So, Section 35. The Bar Council of India is constituted under which provision of the Advocates Act 1961? Section 4. A is the right choice. Section 66A of the Information Technology Act 2000 was struck down by the Supreme Court in which case? Shreya Singhal versus Union of India. Choice D. Shreya Singhal versus Union of India 2015, the Supreme Court struck down Section 66A. The principle of strict liability was first laid down in which leading English case? Rylands versus Fletcher. D is the right choice. Under the Income Tax Act 1961, the term previous year is defined in which section? Section 3 of the Income Tax Act 1961 defines previous year as the financial year immediately preceding the assessment year, anchoring the entire scheme of taxation. D is the right choice. The principle audi alterum partem forms part of which doctrine in administrative law? D. Principles of natural justice. Under the Bharatiya Sakshya Adhiniyam 2023, the term evidence is defined under which section? The General Definitions Clause of the BSA 2023 is Section 2.1 and Subclause E defines evidence to include statements of witnesses and documents, including electronic records produced for inspection. Under Motor Vehicles Act 1988, no fault liability provisions are contained in which section? Section 140. C is the right choice. Under the CPC 1908, the inherent power of court is preserved under which section? Section 151 of the CPC saves the inherent power of every civil court to make such orders as may be necessary for the ends of justice or to prevent abuse of the process of court. An appeal from an original decree is provided under which section of the CPC 1908? Section 96. B is the right choice. Which article empowers the President to proclaim a national emergency on grounds of armed rebellion? Article 352. C is the right choice. Under the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita 2023, organized crime is punishable under which section? Section 111. A is the right choice. Section 111 of BNS for first time codifies organized crime as a separate general offense at the national level. Under the 2013 Land Acquisition Act, a social impact assessment is required under which chapter? Second chapter. D is the right answer. Chapter 2 of the Right to Fair Compensation and Transparency in Land Acquisition Act 2013 mandates the preparation and appraisal of a social impact assessment before acquisition. An appeal from an order of a state bar council in disciplinary matters lies to which authority under the Advocacy Act 1961? C. Bar Council of India. In which case did the Supreme Court evolve the doctrine of basic structure of the Constitution? The 13-judge bench in Keshavananda Bharati 1973 held that Parliament's amending power under Article 368 does not extend to altering the basic structure of the Constitution. Under Section 173 of the BNSS 2023, information regarding cognizable offences may be received in which form? Written or oral form, including electronic communications. D is the right choice. Under the CGST Act 2017, supply is defined in which of the sections? Section 7 of the CGST Act sets out the scope of supply, the taxable event under GST, covering all forms of supply of goods or services made for a consideration in the course of business. Under the BSA 2023, opinions of experts are relevant under which section? Section 39 of the BSA 2023 reenacts the rule of the old Section 45 of the Indian Evidence Act, making the opinions of experts on foreign law, science, art, handwriting, and finger impressions relevant. So A is the right choice. Soham markets fitness apparel using a mark deceptively similar to FitLife. The remedy under the Trademarks Act 1999 is D. Suit for infringement under Section 29. The charging section of the Income Tax Act 1961 is Section 4 is the charging section levying income tax for any assessment year at the rates prescribed by the Finance Act on the total income of every person. Section 4 is the right choice. Under Section 89 of CPC 1908, a court may refer a dispute to which alternative forum? The right answer is B. Arbitration, conciliation, judicial settlement, lok adalat, or mediation. Under the Information Technology Act 2000, identity theft is punishable under which section? Section 66C of the Information Technology Act specifically penalizes fraudulent or dishonest use of another person's electronic signature, password, or any other unique identification feature, that is identity theft. The provisions for reference, review, and revision are contained respectively in which sections of the CPC? 113, 114, and 115. B is the right choice. Under the BSA 2023, admissions are dealt with under which sections? Sections 15 to 21. Choice A is the right choice. Under the Indian Contract Act 1872, an agreement enforceable by law is defined as D. Contract is the right choice. The 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act 1992 introduced provisions relating to which institution? The 73rd Amendment inserted Part 9, Article 243 to 243O into the Constitution, giving constitutional status to Panchayat Raj institutions. Anticipatory bail under Bharatiya Nagarik Suraksha Sanhita 2023 is provided under which section? Section 482. So D is the right choice. Under the Arbitration and Conciliation Act 1996, a party may seek interior measures from a court under which section? Section 9. So, choice B is the right choice. Question number 90. Under the Indian Evidence Act 1872, the burden of proof was generally placed on which party? The party who would fail if no evidence were given. So C is the right choice. Under the BNSS 2023, search of a place by a police officer requires which procedure? Recording of reasons in writing and presence of two witnesses. Choice D is the right choice. The polluter pays principle was authoritatively recognized by the Supreme Court. In which case? Vellore Citizens Welfare Forum versus Union of India. B is the right choice. Under the Specific Relief Act 1963, specific performance of a contract is granted under which section after the 2018 amendment? Section 10. Choice A is the right choice. Which article of the Constitution prohibits discrimination on grounds of religion, race, caste, sex, or place of birth? Article 15(1) prohibits the state from discriminating against any citizen on the specified grounds of religion, race, caste, sex, or place of birth, complementing the general equality guarantee in Article 14. The National Green Tribunal was established under which Act? National Green Tribunal Act 2010. D is the right choice. Under the Transfer of Property Act 1882, sale of immovable property is defined in which section? Section 54 defines sale as a transfer of ownership in exchange of a price paid or promised and prescribes how such sale for immovable property must be effected. The directive principles of state policy are enumerated in which part of the Constitution? Part 4. Part 4 of the Constitution, Articles 36 to 51, contains the directive principles of state policy. Guidelines on prevention of sexual harassment of women at workplace were laid down by the Supreme Court in Vishakha versus State of Rajasthan. B is the right choice. Arati seeks divorce after Rajesh deserts her for 3 years. Under the Hindu Marriage Act 1955, the relevant ground is desertion under Section 13(1) AIBE. Makes desertion for a continuous period of not less than 2 years immediately preceding the petition a ground for divorce. The doctrine of lifting the corporate veil was prominently discussed in which leading case? Solomon and Company Limited. Solomon versus